we're back. Up Sunday FM91. This is me, RJ Wafa, with you guys. It's 11:36 on the dial. मेरे साथ में बहुत ही special guest मौजूद है. Now we have Dr. Anokhi Khanum with us today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Anokhi.
Thank you for having me again.
It is lovely every time you come over. Thank you very much for taking out the time.
No problem.
काफी दिनों के बाद we're doing this.
Yes.
It's been a while. Actually, Dr. Anokhi, Autism Awareness Day के लिए we're here today. So उसके अंदर मुझे ये बताइए, a lot of people, a lot of us, even me, हमको नहीं पता कि autism क्या होता है. So just tell us what exactly autism is.
Okay. So autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Okay? We no longer call the child an autistic child. We call the child a child with autism.
Same.
Autism can be found on a spectrum from something that's very mild to something that's more severe. Therefore, the autism spectrum disorder as a definition.
Same.
Okay? Autism itself is characterized by two main problems. I mean, the first one is the difficulty in social communication.
Say.
Okay. And the second is restricted and repetitive behavior. So, for example, I mean, with the first one, for example, with social interaction, it can be that the child... Yeah, sorry.
The child?
Yeah. So, with the social interaction, it just basically is that the child's not communicating with the parents.
Okay.
You know, you have the verbal, you have the non-verbal. With the verbal, you have children who are actually speaking, developing normally till 2 years of age. But then when they're talking, they're not really talking to you. When you call the name, they don't respond. When you point at something, they don't look. They don't point at something. Okay? They're living in their own little world. They find it difficult to make friends. You have others who are non-verbal, who basically, by the age of 2 years, have not developed any communicative speech.
Okay.
So they're not talking at all. They're isolated, not making friends. Parents kind of get frustrated because they refuse to go to sleep in time. They have behavioral issues. They have I've seen kids who basically the parents have come in because the child is refusing to eat or not eating properly. Or I've seen kids because the parents are concerned, just a simple thing like having a sandwich. They're like, the child has to be there to see them construct the sandwich, and it has to be done a particular way before he takes it.
Okay.
I mean, it's a wide variety of behaviors, but the main issue is, and one of the most obvious things that they notice is eye contact. The child does not make eye contact. That's one of the most obvious presentations in autism. One of the things you notice the most is they don't necessarily make eye contact. They don't like being touched. They don't like being hugged. So obviously, and then when they're in bigger groups, when they're in school and play groups, etc., the teachers start noticing that they don't enjoy the sort of group games. They're sitting by themselves, doing their own things. Another thing parents notice is that the second thing, which is a restricted, repetitive behavior.
Same.
For example, a child will suddenly have an obsession. These things tend to be transient, which means they can have it for a few years and then they'll switch to something else.
Same.
But they'll have an out of normal obsession with something. For example, cars. They will want to know everything from A to Z about a car. They will line up cars. They will, different color cars. It's just out of normal range when you see the child obsessing. Also with the restrictive behavior, what we notice is sorry, I just kind of lost it.
Okay, great.
And then one of the most important things with autistic spectrum disorder is we don't know exactly when it starts, when it develops. We know that most kids are diagnosed usually around the 3rd year of life. As I said, it's the spectrum, so you can have a child who's non-verbal with low cognitive functioning. Basically, the child is there literally locked in their own world, sort of not able to communicate with you, not able to. They want to tell you what they want, but they're unable to do that. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum where you have a child who's verbal, which is something I've also seen, and they will look at you, they won't make eye contact. You ask them a question, they start talking, they talk at you, they don't talk to you. I've literally had children where I've never met them before, and the next thing I know is that they're climbing on my lap and playing with my hair. And I'm just like, okay, this is not normal behavior, because initially when a child sees you, They're quite apprehensive, nervous with new people, get very sort of attached to the parents, hide behind their parents. And these kids are completely opposite. This was previously known as the Asperger's syndrome, but now it's been brought into the autism spectrum disorder. We as human beings have been constructed genetically to have an inborn system of social frame.
Alright.
So basically, if you ever notice, if you go out and you look around, you'll always start noticing faces places.
Alright.
You know, you look in the car, clouds, and you see, oh, that looks like someone's face. Or that, you know, you look at, you look at that chair over there.
Yeah.
It looks like two eyes and a mouth kind of thing.
It does, actually.
It's quite scary. But we are actually constructed to see these things.
Right.
And the reason being is that, and same thing with sounds. The reason being is when the baby is born, they become obsessed with the parent's face, with faces. They become obsessed with sounds because they are trying to, this is the way they are learning social communication. They're trying to understand the parent. They're trying to understand those around them because the next step is trying to communicate. So after 2-3 months, they start, when they're cooing, they'll start mimicking, copying. You smile, they smile. You laugh, they laugh. You make a sound, they repeat the sound. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of repetition in there, which is normal for a neurotypical child developing. Research has shown that this is something that children on the autistic spectrum have a problem with. Either it's completely absent or there's kind of some sort of dysfunction. We're not sure. So they don't recognize that. I mean, when you walk into a room, the first thing I will notice is you. Right? And the first thing I do is make eye contact because that's the way I evaluate, who you are, your mood, friendly, non-friendly, communicative, non-communicative sort of thing. When a child or a person on the autistic spectrum walk into into a room, they notice everything.
They do.
And you just imagine this as information overload.
Okay.
Imagine being in your life as being in a disco where there's constantly loud drumming music. You're surrounded by strangers who are, jumping up and down and flashing lights. And I mean, for a short time it's nice, when you're a teenager and you're having your whatever, or you're going to a bhangra wedding or whatever, it's for short periods of time, it's okay. True. But then if you're having this is constantly, your life, it becomes sort of information overload.
Same.
So even when you ask an autistic child to draw or write, they are, some of them, this is again depending where on the spectrum they are. They tend to, like, if you ask them to draw if I ask an autistic child to draw you, again it depends where on the spectrum they are, what are their strengths and weaknesses, etc. They will start drawing you with, so a normal child would usually draw a circle, your eyes, your nose, your mouth. An autistic child would start first with your hair. Okay. With your shape, with your clothes, with your glasses, sort of thing.
They're noticing that much.
Yeah, so they're not zoning in on what we are innately created to zone into. To recognize people, your eyes, and then your mouth. There's a lot of research ongoing on autism. You have like 6 journals out there. If you wanted to read all the research, you'd have to read like 6.5 articles per day. And even then you won't catch up with with all the research going out there. One of the things that we do know about autism is that it's heavily genetic based. Okay. It's not a single gene. It's a mosaic. Again, when they've done genetic studies, they have, again, from different papers, different researchers, they found they've been up to 300 to 400 different genes and genetic mutations that have been identified in different forms and formats linked to autism.
It's complicated.
Very complicated.
All right. So we have a short break lined up. Iski taraf jaate hain. Wapas aayenge. Keep it locked 91 and we'll be right back with you. And we're back. आप सुन रहे हैं FM91. All right, it's 2:04 on the dial. यहाँ पे हमारे पास जो है Dr. Anokhi Khanum is with me. Welcome to the show, Dr. Anokhi. Welcome back.
Thank you.
चलिए जी, मुझे ये बताइए, how common is autism? हम लोग कहते हैं कि जी, okay, so this is happening somewhere far, far away, और हमारे यहाँ तो इतना कुछ हो नहीं रहा. So tell us how common this is.
Okay, I have been back a year and a half. Now, this is just anecdotal information.
All right.
Okay? It's not based on any statistics or anything like that. So I've been back a year and a half, and I have seen at least 3 to 4 kids who are very likely on the autism spectrum disorder. Okay?
Okay.
In Pakistan, I've not found any statistics. I don't know if we have any statistics on ASD. In the US, so just you have to remember something. ASD was first classified in the 1980s.
All right.
So before then, it was considered a mental health issue. It was classified under psychosis or schizophrenia and things like that. So in the 1980s, it actually got a name of its own because they realized it's a separate condition. It's a neurodevelopmental issue rather than a mental health issue. And since then, the numbers have been changing. And then now I'm talking about the US numbers because that's what I found is where the most of the data is coming from. In 2013, they changed again the definition, so the numbers have changed again. So in the US, for example, depending on what data you're looking at, autism is as common as 1 in 80 or 1 in 100. Okay, that's very common.
That's very common.
Very common. When you look at the information on autism on an international scale, so to the international data that's been kind of summed together, it is 7.6. The prevalence is 7.6 in 1,000.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And again, is the number that low because we are just not diagnosing, there's no real research outside, sort of like in Pakistan and countries like this. Do we really not have that much? Or, it's still a high number, 7.6.
It is.
1,000, it's a very high number. Or is there just not that much out there? In my own personal experience, like I've said, I've come across a few kids with ASD, and there is still a lot of issue here in Pakistan, depending on your background, depending on your education, depending where you're from. Whether the parents want the diagnosis or not.
Same.
Okay. There's some. The average age of diagnosis is about 3 years. Okay. But in the West, it's coming earlier and earlier because we're doing screening now. Okay. So you're getting kids coming in at 18 months, at 20 months for investigations, and the diagnosis when they've been diagnosed with ASD remains stable until the age of 3 years. So it is quite reliable to the earlier to diagnose it.
Okay.
And we are seeing symptoms at an earlier age also, but those are in research center where they have a bit more sensitive ways of studying the kids' behavior, the children's behavior. But yahan par the problem issue in Pakistan is that unfortunately people get afraid their child is going to be labeled.
Same.
Okay. And they don't want to label their child. Children who are on the more severe end of the spectrum, they kind of disappear into the ether and they come back out again when the parents kind of feel, okay, school may, they're having issue. Or when they're 3 years old, 4 years old, and the child's still not talking and communicating. And they realize, okay, we really need to do something, or 5 or even later. And then you have another set of parents who'll come in and at 2 years and they're like, okay, my child's not talking. My child is not, communicating with us. My child doesn't like playing with other kids. And they really want to, understand ki kya ho raha hai.
Right.
And it is really important. It is very important that if you do notice that there's something odd with your child, your child's not behaving like someone else. It may not be ASD. Okay, not every child with abnormal behavior or odd behavior in social situation has ASD. But it is important that you take them to your pediatrician, and it is important to have them just the basic screening and evaluation. In my practice, we do basically what we do in Europe and the US and Canada and these places is you have what we call is a well child check.
Same.
Okay? And this is one of the reasons why. Because we are following up the children from birth. So under the age of 1 year, it's approximately 1 to 2 month checkups. And then after 6 months, it's every 3 months. And then after 18 months, you have a 2-year checkup, and then once a year. Okay? Through these checkups, we're not just seeing is your child weighing properly, putting on weight and growing and sort of thing. We're seeing, is your child reaching their milestones? Are they cooing on time? Are they making sort of different noises for different things? Are they mimicking your speech? Are they what we call at between 6 to 9 months? It's called friending, which basically means they start recognizing the difference between their parents and someone else. So they start having sort of anxiety about other people, which is completely normal because they start realizing, okay, these are different people. Around 6 months, they differentiate between male and female, and then by 9 months, they start to notice, they're strangers in a room. This is all normal behavior. Then we have a screening tool, which is called the MChat. It's a questionnaire. It's a short questionnaire. It's a quick questionnaire. Usually if you come in, we do it at 18 months and we repeat it at 24 months if it's positive at 18 months, if it shows a suspicion. If it shows a very high suspicion, a very obvious, what you call markings for a child possibly on the autistic spectrum, I may speak to one of the specialists. Unfortunately, Tanya was supposed to be here today and she wasn't able to. But she does the evaluation of children on the suspected of being on the autistic spectrum disorder. Because early intervention is very important.
It is.
Early intervention is very important. We don't have enough data on children under, the sort of under 2 years, intervention at that age, what it does. But we definitely have data 3 years and beyond. The earlier you intervene, the earlier you help the child, the better the prognosis later on. The better the integration into society. And you have to remember something. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder and it's lifelong. It's not something that can be cured. It's something that is genetic. Okay? We do suspect, as I said, it's a mosaic of genes, it's a combination. Because every investigation has shown something new. Okay?
True.
So we're thinking it's a multifactorial. Okay? And then within families also. I mean, another good way of showing how strong genes have to play a role in the development of ASD. Again, depending on the data you're looking at, ASD in monozygotic twins, which is identical twins, is about 70%.
Okay.
Between 50 to 70%. That if one has it, the other will. And pretty much in all of them, if one has it and the other doesn't have obvious ASD, they do have some
signs.
They have something or the other on the behavioral spectrum sort of thing.
Great.
And within families themselves, siblings can vary anywhere between 5 to 20% of the developing ASD. What we also know is ASD is more prominent in boys. So you have 4 times more in boys than you have in girls.
Oh, wow. So there's a question here. Ruxana Iqbal ne message kiya, gave off a very nice topic. And then she says, I have a question for Dr. Anokhi. My son and daughter have some problems and they feel very, very shy in front of other people. Iske ilawa, they also do not speak in the class or answer the questions.
Okay. With ASD, this is why it's important to actually come in and get their child evaluated. There is no sort of one-off test. I'll say do a blood test or a brain scan, etc. to diagnose your ASD. It's comprehensive interviews, observational, behavioral evaluations, and these are all based on evidence-based strategies. Okay, these are tools that have been shown to work to help in the diagnosis of ASD. And it goes over a few days. Okay? So just a simple question. The children may just be incredibly shy.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean they have ASD.
Yeah.
So if she's having concern that they're having issues in school, it may also be a shyness issue.
Bilkul.
But definitely go to your pediatrician, have a word. If this is something that you've felt highlighted by the teachers, it is affecting their schoolwork, etc. Have a chat with your pediatrician. Have them have a look at it. Another important thing about ASD is, and that's also where the well child checks come in, is, as I said, it may not be ASD. Delayed speech. We know in children, there's a research study which shows children, every 30 minutes of screen time with a child per day under age of 2 increases their risk of delayed speech by 40%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I have kids coming into me with behavioral issues and they're not speaking, and then I find out that half the day they're watching TV or iPhone or iPad, screen time is anything with a screen on it, I don't automatically jump onto ASD. I'm like, okay, you need to completely cut off screen time. Okay. Another issue is, what time are your kids going to bed?
Say.
I have 4-year-olds going to bed at midnight, getting up at 6 in the morning. Yeah, getting up at 6 in the morning to go to school. They're like, koi baat nahi. Lunchtime mein they have their nap, you know. Sorry. They have their 2-3 hour nap, and that kind of makes up for it. I was like, it does not make up for it. I was like, when your child, you need to have wind down time. I always advise parents, the moment the child is born, I was like, there's no sleep training before 6 months of age, but you should already start instilling the wind down time and the wake up time, which basically means 6:30 we go to bed, we have our baths, we change our clothes, we start a bit of, singing or reading or whatever you want to do with that child, something very calming over the next hour. So an hour before bedtime, everything needs to be calming, so that it's at 7:30 you put them in bed. Babies, they'll wake up after an hour, 2 hours, etc. for their feed. That's completely fine. You continue the normal routine. It happens in their room. Don't make the lights all bright like it's daytime. And then 7:30 in the morning is wake up time. Okay? During the day, they're sleeping outside and they're outside with the rest of the family. 2 naps in the day they can have in their quiet room. The rest of the time they're outside. The reason being why this is really important is growth hormone is released at night when you're sleeping. So from 7:30 to 7:30, and babies require sleep. So between 4 months to 12 months.
Okay.
Anywhere between 12 to 16 hours.
Same.
Okay. And the growth hormone release happens at night. Major developmental sort of changes happen at night. So development takes place at night when they're sleeping. You have your main circadian rhythm, which is your internal clock. The major one is basically set at night. So basically your melatonin starts releasing, which is your sleep hormone, starts releasing around 7:30, spikes around midnight, and then sort of dampers off. And then early in the morning around 7:30, you have your cortisol spiking, which is your wake hormone.
Okay.
If your child is not sleeping on time, if your child is not waking on time, if your child is not getting enough sleep at night, there are going to be behavioral changes. Children who lack sleep don't often just sit there and sleep on on their desk. Little ones, the toddlers, the younger kids. They tend to be very hyperactive. They tend to be difficult to control. They tend to not to listen, not to behave the way they're supposed to.
Same.
Okay, or the way you'd like them, because they're tired. So 2 major things. One is screen time. No screen time under the age of 2 years. We know it's bad. I have parents who come to me, they're like, okay, there's no other way of feeding them unless we show them the screen. I was like, you offered them the screen in the first place. I was like, we've grown up without screen and our parents have been able to feed us. This is a very unscientific way of explaining things. Usually I say you never say that. But I was just like, you need to figure out ways. We've just become very lazy. Okay? If you're not successful in feeding your child without a screen, or you're getting frustrated, my child is not eating unless I'm like extremely distracting them, etc., you need to go see your pediatrician. You need to ask them, okay, what am I doing wrong? How can I adjust things? How can I make things different, etc.? How am I supposed to feed my child? And sometimes often it's a simple thing of parents expecting the child to eat more than they actually require. Your child requires their fistful. So your child's fist that's the minimum amount of food that they need. So in a child who's 7 months old, it's just a few nivalas, that's it. And then if you expect the child to eat the entire bowl, half an adult's bowl, they're not going to want to. And then you think that, okay, the only way I can do that is by shutting their mind down, by putting a screen in front of their face, and then just feed them. Okay, so there are other issues also that needs to be evaluated before jumping on ASD. This is where your well checks come in. This is where your pediatric, going to your general pediatrician to make sure, okay, everything else is in normal range. Everything else is being done the way it's supposed to do. Children are weird. Children are crazy. They're never going to want to listen to you. They're never want to sleep on time. They're never going to want to eat what you're giving them, etc. But it's your job as a parent to try and
make all of that happen.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And other things also that are really important that you need to screen is your child hearing? So your child's not listening to you now. One of the main questions we ask when we're screening is, do you ever feel your child is not hearing you? I mean, are they not listening or can they not hear you? So any child that we suspect is on the spectrum, we always send them for a hearing test. Always. Because you want to screen to make sure that this is not a reason. I tend to check their vision also to make sure, because if they are on the spectrum and they have poor vision, it kind of makes intervention difficult.
Right. True.
So there are a lot of screening that needs to be done. There's a lot of adjustment. I mean, I've had kids who come in, and I was speaking to Tanya, and she's like, a lot of kids who come in with behavioral issues, it's just screen time. She's like, I literally have to ban it. I mean, that was the major issue. And with this mom with her 2 kids, the children may just be incredibly shy, but I don't know. That's why I say it's really important when you have concerns, go speak to your pediatrician.
Perfect. Chalo ji, छोटी सी break की तरफ जा रहे हैं. वापस आते हैं. Keep it locked 91. There's also a song lined up. Enjoy. And we're back. आप सुन रहे हैं FM91. मेरा नाम है RJ Wafa. Dr. Anokhi Khanum is with me. Dr. Anokhi, thank you very, very much for taking out the time and for coming here today.
My pleasure.
मुझे ये बताइए before I let you go कि अभी फिलहाल being a pediatrician, आप कोई भी ऐसी 5 चीजें which you'd like to tell all the moms out there कि जी ये आपने करना ही करना है. 5 things.
Well, some of them I've already mentioned.
Yeah.
Number 1 is no screen time.
Same.
Under the age of 2 years. Okay?
Right.
And after that, it needs to be controlled. Number 2, routine. Every child, neurotypical, children with disability, every child needs routine. From birth, needs routine. Please stick with it. Okay?
Same. Okay.
Well checks. Something that is not happening here much. Really need to take your child in for well checks. Get them regularly checked up. Depending on the age, as I said, under 2 years, it's more regular. You do it monthly to bi-monthly or 3 monthly. Every 3 months, depending on which age group slot they're in. You really need to do that because, as we've already discussed, ASD, the earlier you diagnose it,
the better it is.
The better it is, the prognosis. The child has this lifelong, okay? And what you want to do with the diagnosis, it's not about labeling the child, it's about examining their strengths and weaknesses and working with it, okay? Supporting their strengths and working on their weaknesses so that they can sort of integrate into society. And some of these kids are very severely on the lower end with what you call they're nonverbal, with very poor or non-existent communication skills, etc. So we need to find other ways of communicating, pictographs, different forms of therapies, etc. And to be very understanding of parents who do have children who are not neurotypical, and be supportive. Even school system here, majority of them do not have any extra help or support system for children who are on the spectrum and yet cognitively functioning normal. Okay? So that's number 3 is routine. Number 4, coming back to nutrition.
Okay.
Healthy, balanced diet. No sugars under the age of 2 years.
Dr. Anokhi, what's a healthy diet for a child?
So breakfast. So just imagine what you want your child to be eating at 40 years. That's what I tell the parents. Because everywhere in the world, what's available is different.
Same.
So for breakfast, you want something which is high fiber. You want something with rough age. So porridge, a form of that kind of cereal. Not these over-sugared artificial box cereals that you get. We're not going to name names.
No.
But like porridge, mix it with fruit, etc. To give put a few nuts in it. And of course, with the nuts, with the younger age groups, you have to grind them because of risk of choking. You have to take that into consideration. You have your mid-morning snacks. The mid-morning snacks should be fruits, raw vegetables, yogurts, non-processed cheeses, etc. Then you have your lunchtime. Lunch, depending on the age group, you need to have it. So it basically the entire household needs to be eating healthy. So you can have your chapatis and your rice, but just remember your chapati and your rice is not your male meal. It's what you're eating with it. So that's salan, that's sabzi, whatever you're making, whether it's chicken cordon bleu or it's chicken karai. Okay. Use the right oils. Make sure that you have a mix of raw vegetables on the side. Same thing with afternoon snack and same thing dinner. Just to highlight something, we are in Pakistan, typhoid is going around, we're having multi-drug resistant typhoid going around. So I must highlight with raw fruits and vegetables, if you can't peel it or cook it, don't eat it. Okay, because that's how the disease is spread. Unless you have a sure form way of washing them. Okay.
Same.
But the smaller the kids, if you can't peel it, you can't cook it, don't eat it. Even when you're cooking vegetables, you have to remember they need to be a little bit crack. Okay, to have the fiber. If they're like cooked to death and they're just these floppy little nondescript things floating in your salan, the nutritional value has gone significantly down. Okay, I have parents coming in and they're saying कि हम तो अंडा पराठा खिलाते हैं बच्चे को we want to make them healthy. I'm like, you're not making your child healthy, you're making your child fat. I don't ever use it in the clinical setting with the child there, but that's pretty much what's happening. I was like, anda paratha every day. I mean, Wafa, do you have anda paratha?
No way.
So you need to see in the future what you want your child eating. So that's pretty much it. The British Heart Foundation still recommends olive oil, canola oil, these ones as your basic daily meals, and it depends, olive oil you can't do deep fry again. Okay, so you need to get an alternate for that, etc. And minimum amount of oils, minimum amount of oily foods, etc. Balance your diet. You need to have 5 fruits and vegetables a day. They've done some massive studies, the epi studies, etc., which has shown that if you have 5 portions of fruit or vegetables a day, it significantly reduces your risk of cancer later in life. But also there, you have to remember that fruit juices are only counted as 1. Those pure 100% fruit juices that you make at home, if you make a gallon of it and you feed your child that's not more than 5 portions of fruit and veggies. That's only 1 portion. So even like your fresh fruits, juices that you make, your child shouldn't be having like several glasses a day. Occasionally, once a week, a couple of times a week if you want, that's fine. But water should be their mainstay. Okay, so the best guide is to think, what do I want my child eating and drinking at the age of 40, where the risks start increasing of cardiovascular disease and everything else, So because we know all of that starts in your teenage years. But again, coming back to well checks, you need to get your regular checkup, your blood pressures. Your child needs to have routine bloods done also. We're now encouraging doing the lipid profile, pre-diabetes screen, etc. We're a population that's at high risk for type 2 diabetes. So we want to pick those kids. Particularly, and they don't necessarily need to be overweight, but the ones who are overweight, absolutely, I've screened some of them, I've picked some of them who are pre-diabetic and sent them on a healthy mission. Again, I don't call it a diet to kids because you don't want them start thinking and obsessing about their weight. I'm like, the entire household needs to change the way they eat and the way they behave. Take the kids out for exercise in this situation and make sure that all the chocolates and biscuits and all these things are banned from the house. You can have them on occasion. They should be treats. They should not be your regular snack time meal. Chocolates and biscuits and chips. Okay? So I think that was number 4, right?
Yes. It was a very long number 4.
Yeah, and number 5 is immunization. Really important, and I forgot to touch on that. Immunization is incredibly vital. The Pakistani EPI program goes up to 1.5 year, okay? Because that's supported by the WHO, and it's I think it's pretty much all we can afford at this point in time. Now, I know a lot of parents out there can afford more, so your vaccine schedule does not finish at 1.5 year. It goes on. It goes on until the teenage years, okay? And then basically after you're a teenager and you've had your final booster, you do the booster every 10 years. When's your booster? When did you have your last vaccine?
I don't even remember.
All right, so you need to go check it out and you need to have your shots, okay? Every 10 years. And when you travel, you need to know which area I'm going to. Do I need any vaccines? Do I need any sort of precautionary measures to be taken? Okay. And coming back to vaccine, is something very important we forgot to mention. Vaccines do not cause autism. Vaccines have not been shown to be linked with autism. Okay. Autism is strongly genetic with some environmental interaction. The environmental interaction we're still not sure about. Okay. There's not enough investigation on that. But what we definitely know is vaccines is not one of them. I know there is an article out there by Wakefield that was done in the 90s. It's fraudulent.
Okay.
He has lost his license to practice. All the authors have withdrawn their names from that article. The journal, The Lancet, which was and still considered a high impact or a reputable journal, has also withdrawn it from their journal. Okay. It was based on a small sample size of, I think it was like 12 patients, 8 of whom already had predisposing neurodevelopmental issues before they were vaccinated. Okay, and this was left out. It was, he had been approached to actually make the results look this way because they wanted to bring in a class action suit.
Okay.
All right. So it's completely fraudulent. Vaccines do not cause autism. Vaccines are extremely, extremely important, especially the MMR vaccine. Measles kills. Okay? 1 in 1,000 measles kill. And I think the rate would be higher in Pakistan because we have kids with malnutrition. So this data is from kids who are healthy. We have kids with malnutrition out there.
Yeah.
Okay? We have babies under 1. Babies under 1 cannot be vaccinated. So I definitely recommend, if you have a child who's under 1 and has not had the MMR vaccine yet, they cannot. It's after the age of 12 months that they get the vaccine. Though over here we do the measles at 9 months. But we're not sure how effective it is, so we need to repeat it after 12 months. If you've gotten the Pakistani EPI and it's gotten the measles at 9 months, you need to still go out there and try. You need to get your booster after 12 months, but you need to try and get the MMR vaccine. Okay, and do the 2 shots of that. And if you have a baby and you have friends coming over who have kids who are in the ages where they should be vaccinated and the parents have chosen not to vaccinate the kids, doesn't matter which vaccine, if they've chosen not to vaccinate the kids, those kids do not enter your house, particularly if you have a baby under 2 months who's not been vaccinated. And definitely that under 1 year who's not got his measles vaccination. Because these vaccine preventable diseases, if your child catches them, the reason why we vaccinate is because these are killers.
Oh, wow.
Okay? We have seen a drastic drop in morbidity or mortality, as in disease and death, from these diseases, these what we call vaccine preventable diseases, since we've started vaccinating. So please vaccinate your child. I don't think it's so much of an issue in Pakistan, though I've come across random cases here and there. But I think in Pakistan we're still pretty good at vaccinating.
Sahi, perfect, brilliant. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Anokhi, for all the information
pleasure.
and for coming here. I really hope we can do this again.
My pleasure. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Khada Hafiz.
ठीक है, ये थी डॉक्टर अनोखी. I'm going towards the track. वापस आते हैं. Keep it locked 91. I'll be right back with you.